Hello everyone and welcome back to Data Analysis YouTube channel. This YouTube channel is dedicated to explaining Microsoft Excel and other spreadsheet applications in very easy to understand ways. For this particular video, we will be going through pivot tables and how to clean your data to make it ready for analysis. We have the data in front of us already, and it is important to understand some of the rules that we need to know for pivot tables functions to work, because if these conditions are not met, if we put it that way, your pivot table function may not work properly. So your data has to be organized so that you can, when you apply the pivot table function, it will work properly. And you shouldn't have any blank rows, right? And also you shouldn't have blank cells. If you have a blank cell, it needs to contain a value. So you can put 0 in blank cells. And then you must have column headers. So in our own case, we all have column headers. Column headers is important because pivot tables work with the fields of the columns, of course, the fields, the column headers. So it's very, very important for you to have column headers. Before we get right into it, if you're a new subscriber or if you're a returning subscriber rather, please hit the like button and thank you for coming back. If this is the first time of coming to this YouTube channel, please subscribe and hit the like button. You can also include in the comment section what you want us to talk about in the subsequent videos. And thank you for stopping by. You can share this YouTube video with your colleagues and your friends so that they can also benefit from this information. Back to the data. We can see that column A, which is the date column, does not really reflect date, right? We are seeing values that does not exactly look like the date. And this is just about a format. So it's a format issue and we can fix this. So this is me. I have highlighted the entire column A that contains information. And to change this format from what it is to the date format, you come to the number section of the Home tab and you click on the drop down of the number format box and you select short date. We already did a video about everything in the number section of the Home tab. The link to the video rather is in the description box. So please go to the link so that you understand how to navigate and use the format functions in the number section of the Home tab in case you do not already know how to do this. So our column A is looking all nice and good, and we can see that we have blank rows, right? Which makes the data not look really organized. So we need to delete the rows and the blank rows. And one of the ways that we can do this is that you just highlight the row. If you want to highlight multiple rows at a time, after highlighting the first row, you hold down the Control key on the keyboard and you select the second empty row, and you still hold down the Control button and you select the third row. So you always have to hold down the Control button to make multiple selections. But imagine that you have 15,000 rows of data and you have empty rows scattered all over the place. This will be very cumbersome for you to highlight all the empty rows, look for them, and fix them one after the other. Another way that you can do this in Microsoft Excel, which is very easy, is you highlight your entire range of cells that you want to identify the empty rows in them, and you come to the editing function or the editing icon on the Home tab, and you click on the drop-down button on Find and Select. You click Go to Special and select Blanks from the nice dialog box that has just popped up. And you click OK. All the blank rows have been selected automatically. If you have blank cells as well, the blank cells will be highlighted as well. And to delete all these blank rows at the same time, you come to the cells function in the home tab and you click on the drop down for delete. And I am going to select delete she's rows, just like has been highlighted. Only the highlighted rows will be deleted. And this is what we have. Now we have removed all the empty rows. The next thing that we need to do, because as you can see from the description, so for the amount column C, I'm just going to add a comma because I like my data to look like this, especially when we are talking about amounts. I'd like to see the number of digits, right? So back to column B, which is description. There are certain things that we notice. Number one is that there is a mixture of uppercase and lowercase letters in a particular word, which is not proper. The second thing that we notice is that for some cells, there are spaces before the beginning of the word, okay, which doesn't also look nice. Now we can fix this, and we have text functions for this purpose. Now you remember what I said earlier, that it doesn't look nice, it doesn't look proper, so we have a text function called proper. What this text function does, okay, is to make only the first letter in each word to be in the uppercase format, and all other letters will be lowercase. So I open the parentheses and I select the text that I want to format, and I hit the enter button. So I want to drag this to apply this formatting to all the other information in the description column. I hover my mouse pointer over the edges of the cell until I get a small cross sign, just like we can see, and I double click my mouse, and this is what we have. Now we can see, for example, transportation expenses. All the letters are now properly arranged, and the same thing for supervision central, courier and postals, and also residentials. The second thing that we need to do, because the spaces in front of the words have not gone out yet, so the second thing we need to do is to organize it in a way that the spaces would go out. The text function that we use for this purpose is called trim. So what trim does basically is to remove all spaces from a text except single spaces between words. So if, of course, this is very logical because transportation expenses is not a word, it's not a single word. Imagine that the space is removed. It would not look proper, right? So what trim does, it removes the extra spaces before the word. And I select this and I click the enter key on my keyboard and I drag down. Now this is all nice and beautiful. This is what I want. This is what we want. And I'm going to copy all this information and I just paste. So what I have done now is that I just pasted the data. I did Ctrl V on my keyboard, which is a shortcut for paste, and I just pasted. So basically, the information has pasted itself with the formula that was used. And we remember that column E formula made reference to column B. So there is a whole lot of mix-up. There's a whole lot of mix-up going on right now. And this is why it is important that when you want to paste this kind of information, especially when you want to copy information that you used a formula to achieve, and you want to paste it back to the original source, you just need to, when you select the first cell, you go to paste, click on the drop down and select paste as values. So pasting as values means that you're pasting the information without the formulas. I have just deleted all the information because that was like our worksheet to arrive at the clean information that we need for our pivot table. So now our data is looking all nice and clean. Let us go straight up into doing the pivot table. To do the pivot table, I'd like to first format this as a table, and the reason is because I would like to name my table. We would see this as we go along. So I have highlighted the range and I want to select a table format. Where is the data for your table? So Excel has already identified. And of course, my table has headers, so I'll leave that checkbox to be ticked and I click OK. You can choose any color that you want. Let's choose this one for the purposes of this tutorial. And you see, of course, the table design tab has appeared so that you can have more options to work on the table as you desire. There was a comprehensive tutorial on format as tables, and the link is in the description box. Please do well to check the link and go through the video if you do not have very good understanding on how to format as tables. So this is all nice, and like I mentioned, I want to name my table, and I am going to name my table sales. There are rules for naming tables, by the way. So please go to the video, the previous videos, and see what the rules are saying. Now my table has been selected, all nice and good. Now let us go to inserting a pivot table. I click on this, and Excel has selected a range, a table for me. And it has, because I named my table sales, this is what is showing up. The table arranges sales. If I did not use the format as table and not name my table, I would rather see something like range A1 to range D18, right? So the next option is choose where you want the pivot table to be placed. You have two options. Either you choose a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. If you choose a new worksheet, which we are choosing right now, Excel will automatically create a new worksheet for you where your table, your pivot table answers or solutions or your pivot table selections will be on, right? So it will create a new worksheet different from the sheet of your source data. And this is what we have. Now, this particular pivot table fields it can be moved. So you just hover your mouse around the table until you get this symbol where you have cross and something like arrows on the edges of the cross, and you hold down on your mouse and you drag to any corner of the screen that you wish to keep this. And then we can commence. So basically we want to set up a pivot table and we want to build a report. So you have drag fields, okay, in this section, which is very important. You have the values, you have the rows, you have the columns, and you have the filters, right? So if you have in your group of columns, so when you have numbers in a particular column, Excel automatically will put those information under values, because for these values, there are certain mathematical functions or mathematical operations that you can do with only values, right? So it will select and put in the value. So for example, I'll click on the check, I'll check the box before amount, and automatically Excel has taken all the amounts to the values tab, the values field rather. When I uncheck this, and let us see for the code. So Excel has also done the same for the code, because on the source data, the codes are represented as numbers, right? So I am going to uncheck this as well, and we need the amount. We also need the description, and this is what we have. Let me just zoom out or zoom in, but I'm zooming to make it bold enough for people to see. Perfect. So this is what we have, right? I am doing a pivot so that we can see the total amount per description. What is the total amount of money spent on courier and postals? I have a thing for commas, so I like to put commas to make it really clear. What is the sum of expenses? How much was spent on electricity? How much was spent on medical? This is it. How much was spent on residentials, right? So this is how it is. And then we can even add the date as a filter, right? So we have this filter on top, which shows the date. So you can filter for a particular date. On this particular date, how much was spent? Okay, so on this particular date, the 3rd of December, okay, this much was spent on rentage, right? So I am going to select all because I want to see all the information. And another very interesting thing you can do is in column B especially, I will just right click to see other options, right? So you can summarize your values. Excel has automatically summarized my values for me by summing the values. But we can choose to count. In the description, how many times did electricity show up? 2 times. How many times did we pay for security? 2 times. How many times did we pay for residentials? 3 times, right? So this is also very interesting for us to see. And another thing we can do with this, you can summarize values by average as well, of course. So medicals or transportation expenses, what Excel does, it takes the average. So the total sum of all the transportation expenses divided by the total number of times the transportation expenses was incurred. This is what we have. And if we will go through other summarized values by max, so for example, for transportation expenses again, Excel will quickly look at the range of data that is all under transportation expense and choose only the maximum value. And if we choose summarize values by this, Excel will sort for only the minimum value. So transportation expenses, the minimum value is 12,000 and the maximum value was around 158,000. That's correct. And we can do a whole lot of other things, right? But I'm going to leave it at sum of amount. This is what we have. We can also change the rows selection and use the code for the rows instead. You can drag fields, okay? You can drag options from the different field areas by just, when you hover your mouse over you take your mouse and hover on the field and you just move it around, right? You can do this and let us keep it on the row. So for the row labels, for the code 37006, we have this total amount. And the same for the others. So we are just going to stick to description to make it easier to understand. Now, this is for doing a pivot table. Of course, when you select the pivot table and you open a new worksheet. But what happens when you want to do your pivot on the existing worksheet? So basically, you will have your pivot report side by side with your source data. It depends on the kind of data that you're working with, and it depends on what you prefer. Sometimes I like to see my pivot report on the same sheet as my source data. So, but when you select existing worksheet, you need to choose the location where you want your pivot table report to be placed, and you click OK. And this is what we have. So you can build the same pivot report on this particular sheet where you still have your source data. And let's try to do that. The description. There you go. Just exactly what we had initially. And I put the comma, and that is it. So this can help you. You can see your pivot report side by side with your source data. Very easy. Now, this is what we have for the basics of building a pivot table. So we started by talking about how to clean the data, just in case you have data that is not very organized. You can organize the data first, and when you clean it up, then you can apply your pivot table function to the set of data so that you can have very accurate results. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please, if you are yet to subscribe to this YouTube channel, please do subscribe so that you can have information when new videos are posted, and click the notification bell so that you will be notified when new videos are posted. Also, like this video, and you can share this contents with your friends and with your colleagues. You can also drop a comment in the comment section. Thank you so much for stopping by, and see you another time.